Hey Lance, episode 2. Got a easy question for you. Is Godrick trash?
Yes.
I agree. Yes.
Good talk. Glad we had it.
Yeah, I guess that's
This
the
was
episode,
easy.
guys. We'll see you in the third one. No, Godrick is not a good boss. I think there are pieces of the lore itself, like the lore of Godrick is kind of cool, but I can only give it like kind of. The music is good. For the story that he tells, I think the music is pretty dang good. But the fight itself, the mechanics of the fight are pretty lame.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would agree. My thesis statement is actually borrowed from him. A lowly tarnished playing as a lord.
That's a good thesis statement. So you think Godrick is playing as a lord?
Yes, specifically.
Hit me with it.
He has the birthright, I suppose.
Part of the golden lineage. Yeah.
From the golden lineage. For how imposingly he was built up. Like in terms of boss foreshadowing, because I mean no Souls game is going to be direct. It's always
right,
vague, evocative, very imprecise words.
Right.
I don't feel like Godrick lived up to it fully.
Yeah, maybe kick us off with the approach to Godrick as a new player coming into the games.
Yeah, on a literal level, like the way that it's all framed and set up is really good, I think. I mean, there are more avenues that you can use to approach Godrick than Margit, for example, because he's at the end of the dungeon.
Right.
But no matter which way you go, whether it is through that enormous courtyard, if you liked one ballista before Margit, you're gonna love like 20 of them.
You pop out of that door where the grafted scion is, and there's just 4 million of those things pointed at you.
Yeah, that was, I think you described it when I first entered that area as welcome to Dark Souls, which was not the first time you said that, and it wasn't the last time, and I was really just getting sick of being welcomed to
Dark Souls.
To Dark Souls.
I think everything is coming off of Margit, right?
Yeah.
Which, like I said in the previous video, narratively, Margit's whole presentation is incredibly powerful, right? And I think to you mentioned that you think Margit is an excellent boss, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And you're walking up those steps, right? You're walking up the bridge to Stormveil, right? Which has been this imposing far off thing the whole way. I mean, so what were those thoughts? Just walking up there, because I think it's hard to talk about Godrick without talking about Stormveil itself. And you've already alluded to it. It's the first real Dark Souls zone.
Yep. Yeah, it's the term the game uses as well, if I recall. It's your Anor Londos and everything that followed that design, where they set this precedent of here is hell, go wade through it. It is departing from the open world and returning to a very curated experience,
right?
Where they could be a lot more precise about location, framing devices. They know the routes ish that the player could take. You have options. It's not a straight line. With that being said, the entire process of Stormveil was revelatory for me, because I played this game coming off the back of The Witcher 3. So the open world with Torrent felt very good and very familiar. And then I get funneled through to Stormveil, and it's not an open world, and nothing loves me, and nothing likes me, and nothing wants me to be there at all.
Right.
Hearing that door slam shut on the key room with the Banished Knight.
And the snicker.
Yes, that bastard. Yeah, I mean, if we're going to talk about Godrick, and if to talk about Godrick, we need to talk about Stormveil. That is a foundational piece for me. That was one of my first Souls experiences. It was the first time I had a specific Souls experience, which was the long linear run back past the same exhausting enemies that I was not quite good enough or powerful enough to totally disregard. So I was getting chipped away to finally get back to that room with the knight and to fail, but do a little bit better, and then to fail again and do a little bit better until I finally downed him. And honestly, the triumph of beating that knight and getting the key to progress out of the cellar, that was one of those moments of, I won't say joy or triumph or happiness. It was the moment of relief, just profound relief that I didn't have to fight him again in my playthrough. I didn't know if there were more of them. That was a problem for a future version of me, though. That one was dead. I didn't need to come back to this room. I never had to see him again. I never had to dodge him again. I never had to die to him again. That relief is what hooked me on the games eventually. I mean, I'm still not convinced these are fun games.
I was about to ask you. I was about to say, like, I'm pretty sure somewhere along your Stormveil run, I asked you, like, are you having fun?
I don't know if I ever had fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
In all of it. I am still not convinced that these games are fun. I love them.
Right.
I think they count as games. I don't know if they count as fun.
Fun games, yeah.
Their relationship to being games and being fun is very similar to me to how people call Monopoly a game, and some people describe Monopoly as fun. It is one of those two things.
Right.
And people still play it for some reason.
Right.
And that was early Stormveil for me. Was that moment of like, oh, this is a game, but Christ, I'm not sure it's fun. But the relief was incredible. And for some reason, I kept going. And from the night in the locked room, and I bring him up specifically for a reason. From there, I went out onto the bird corridor. And I mean, there were the birds beforehand during the entrance, but I remember that whole process of just getting battered by barrels of dynamite or TNT.
Yeah.
It was that same grinding you down experience, the resignation mixed with resolution.
Yeah.
And just slowly inching forward and making a little bit of progress, and then hoping you can make it back, and then eventually wishing you hadn't made so much progress because you have to hope you can make it back to your souls when you died, and you've got that much more to crawl through again. Yeah. It's a very like emotional experience.
Right.
And making it through all of that, the night on the ground floor down the ladder by Rogier, who is followed by one of the attendants, the patrolling one.
Yeah.
That was another hard, I was never hard stuck, so I shouldn't say that, but that was another moment of just intense suffering and grief for me. Not to sound dramatic.
I mean, you just have the memory of the one that you fought before, and it was alone, right? And this guy's got a friend. So, like, how do I stand a chance against two things when one thing was already hard enough, and it's already so far? And to this point, you have no grace, right? Like, there's no grace anywhere.
And you have to make yourself walk toward him. That was the worst part. Like, the one in the room, there's this degree of psychological separation when you're, like, doing the run back, the soul run of shame.
Right.
You don't have to look at him. This one, like, you've got a long approach. You've got time to think and agonize over how you're going to slice the bastard. You can get so much further into your own head. I remember the bitterness of dying to him.
Right.
And realizing I had to do that whole run again past the birds. And I think that is probably a big part of why I don't run that route through Stormveil anymore. But the reason that I mentioned those nights in particular is because their wind attacks were always the part that got me. Anytime they brought up a whirlwind, and then when I got to the rooftops and the foot soldier started to throw the sword, like the tunnel.
The storm attacks. Yeah,
every storm attack. Those were the things that I really struggled with and died to. They were usually what caught me and either finished me or set up the finishing combo. The sword play I could handle a little bit better because that's something the game tutorialized way more heavily in Limgrave proper.
Yeah, I mean, Margit himself is just like a flurry of sword attacks. So, like, by that time,
I knew how to panic roll. Yeah. So every one of those storm nights was a huge issue for me. They were the highlight/lowlight points throughout all of Stormveil, except for the grafted scion. That asshole. I don't think since then I have felt such intense fear. Right. No, that's not true. I'm sure it was matched at different points in time. But the grafted scion was one of those fights where I very quickly decided that I was comfortable choosing it. Like, that took very little internal discussion. That was not a tough bargain to make with myself, where I ran through a small doorway and threw things at him.
Yeah, I mean, and if you think about it, like, you could reasonably be at the grafted scion. I know you were not this quickly to Stormveil, but you could be there within like 2, 3, maybe 4 hours of when the scion literally just killed you. So, like, I think it's fair that the first wound was already so fresh from the beginning of the game, right? Like, why wouldn't you? I'd be like, well, I can't beat these guys.
Yeah, it was still fresh then. Yeah, they're intimidating. The game just taught me that they are better than me. But this is the big difference. The Storm Knights, I had to learn. I had to figure out how to not die to them, or how to die enough times to then succeed on them. The grafted scions are one and dones, and you can cheese that one. And I don't think that's a good thing, because everything else in Stormveil Castle aside, I'm going to ignore the Crucible Knight, I'm going to ignore the ulcerated tree spirit, like all of the other little moments of horror and pain.
Right.
Those two things are integral to my opinion on Godrick, because I think that Godrick is thematically one of the best bosses in the game.
Yes. Yep.
And mechanically, he is incredibly coherent with his theme, but it falls short with me for some reason. I like him ultimately. I don't have that harsh of an opinion.
Yeah.
But I don't love him the way that I want to. Like, I know that most of my fondness for the fight is based on it being, one of my early bosses in my first Souls game.
Yeah.
He's like, those bosses had the opportunity to be my asylum demon. That's who they were to me. So I remember them very fondly. Leading into that, for the theme, the setup on Godrick, this part I think was pretty damn perfect. I love the shift where Margit is a open bridge littered with swords and spears. Godrick is also on another bridge structure deep into the castle, with the corridors instead littered with tombstones. His opening dialogue of, "Mighty dragon, thou art a true-born heir. Lend me thy strength, O kindred. Deliver me unto greater heights." So that part went way over my head, but is again very cohesive with his character of true-born heir, and referring to this true-born heir as a kindred, basically describing himself as a true-born heir as well, just from a different lineage, and trying to reach greater heights. But then when he goes into a lowly tarnished playing as a lord, "I command thee kneel, for I am the lord of all that is golden." Terrifying moment with his cinematic reveal. Like, that cutscene is, every cutscene in this game is incredible, I feel like.
But that's an intense moment, right? Like, he's telling you.
Incredibly intense moment. He is telling you that you are just like Margit did. This guy is telling you you are beneath him, and he is going to prove it. But the part that I liked best about that theme is that his combat style is a mixture, very consistent mixture, of how the grafted scions attack and how the storm knights throughout the castle apply their weapon skills.
Right.
So if you have been learning from Stormveil and reacting to those visual cues, and if you have learned how to fight the grafted scion, you have a lot of information on how to handle the spectacle of his moveset.
It's like the level has been teaching you how to fight the boss the entire time.
Very effectively.
Yeah.
And while still making the boss a challenge.
Right, and I actually, that's part of the reason why I wanted to ask about your experience going through Stormveil first, is because I have a lot of love for Stormveil the zone. It's one of my favorite zones in the game, especially coming off of Limgrave. It's not that I didn't like Limgrave, just to clarify, but when you come into Limgrave, the game feels very alien from a Souls perspective, because you're given this horse, you're given this wide open field. There's no funnel saying you need to go this way. It's just go, right? And then you get to Stormveil, and all of a sudden things start to feel very familiar. I'm in this very intricate level. I've got this dungeon to explore. There are a lot of different paths in said dungeon, but it is a confined area. It felt very comfortable to me, and I felt like the traps and the mob placement never felt cheap or hammy, or if I think about Scholar of the First Sin in Dark Souls 2, how sometimes they would just gank squad you. I didn't feel gank squatted ever. I felt like there were just challenging moments throughout the level, and I felt like the actual environment itself was pretty to look at. I wanted to go, you actually were the person who told me, oh, you can go and jump on these roofs, and there was this whole other dimensionality to exploring that zone, even after I'd gone through it one time. And I think you mentioned the Crucible Knight, third playthrough, you're like, oh, Kai, do you know there's a Crucible Knight down there? It just it kept opening up and getting bigger and bigger. I have such this rich, fond memory for Stormveil itself that Godrick actually feels underwhelming compared to all the zones. It doesn't feel like a climactic finish, and I've got some other reasons why, but I just wanted to make sure I kind of paired it with you. There are so many good memories that are tied into the zone that precedes the actual boss fight of Godrick that it kind of that emotional wave gets, for me, and it sounds like for you too, it gets carried into that fight itself.
Absolutely. And it is kind of astonishing that the fight somehow feels underwhelming in some way that I've had trouble like articulating, when he literally like turns a dragon into a flamethrower. There's no lack of spectacle or theme or anything in the fight. I don't know what it is that makes it feel a little bit off, but you're correct, because like there's so many expectations being carried through Stormveil into this boss fight that are wonderful.
To hop into maybe some of the mechanics real quick, one of the things that like just stands out to me is like the big reason why Godrick kind of doesn't make my good boss list and is just kind of forgettable. Like honestly, that's what it is he is forgettable. Not his story, but like the experience of fighting him is forgettable. So for anyone who doesn't know, my first playthrough was using a club, right? Like and if you ask Lance, like I showed nothing respect. I always attacked first. There are a lot of enemies in the game that I went through the entire first playthrough with. I never learned their moveset. And I am now 4 characters deep in Elden Ring. I've fought Godrick 4 or 5 times because I'll count that Everjail guy.
Let's go, Troy. Come on now. A human in his own, or not a tarnished either. A something in his own right.
A something in his own right. And I don't know that I have truly learned anything about his moveset, and I didn't have to win. And it's not just like I played Colossal Weapons every run. I beat him with the Cross Naginata, didn't learn a damn thing. I beat him with a Greatsword, didn't learn a damn thing. Beat him with the club, didn't learn a damn thing. I think for the boss to be considered good, he should demand your respect. He has this like dissonance between who he's saying he is, right? I mean, he's a demigod, right? He should be way more menacing. I shouldn't be able to just walk up to him and he's like, I'm gonna hit you with my axe. And I'm like, that's neat. I really don't care. We're gonna trade this one and it's gonna be okay, right? I didn't feel compelled to learn much of anything from it. Whereas all of Stormveil demanded so much attention and respect. It just makes a boss like Godrick feel even more underwhelming.
I agree.
So maybe let's dive into the actual like world building aspects of Godrick, because I think we both agree that is good, right? So now that you're past the games, you've been diving into the lore a little bit. Like, how does the story of Godrick, how does that make you feel? What do you think like about the character itself? Because I think he's an awesome character.
I do feel the same way. And one thing you said kind of brings this thought forward to me of he is a demigod. He should not feel underwhelming to fight. I like the aspect of him being it's the pale echo of a pale echo of a pale echo.
Right.
Thing. Just many steps removed from the original power, the original nobility, the lineage.
Right. He is not Godfrey. Yeah.
Correct. He is not Godfrey. He is not Godwyn. He does not carry the same weight, and he shouldn't. However, that is a story theme side element that doesn't need to like carry forward into the mechanics feeling a little bit underwhelming to me.
Right, because even at that point,
buff.
Yeah, because at that point in the game, I mean, we're still a nobody, right?
Yeah, I think we are nobodies until Godwyn's grace points at you. We are nobody. That is the moment that it changes. So yes, we are no one. He should still be terrifying to us.
Right.
He was able to rule all of Limgrave. Like, that is power in its own right. That is true power. That is tangible power.
Right. I remember specifically, like, when we're going into phase 2, like, I got grabbed on purpose by the dragon. The dragon grab where he picks you up and then he just, like, spits fire on you. I remember, and I wasn't over leveled, I don't think. I feel like it was, like, level 30-something, 40-something. And I think I usually around then have about 20 vigor, and I didn't die. Like,
that should have killed you.
Yeah, exactly. Fast forward a little bit, like if you go into Raya Lucaria and you get grabbed by the abductor mommy down there, like that kills you at 20 vigor. But you're telling me the guy with the dragon arm who slams me into the ground and just breathes fire all over me, that doesn't immediately kill me? That just seems it seems like a mistake almost, right? Like, and then like you were saying, you were getting prepped for all of his attacks going into it. So it's like you knew how to dodge the storm blasts. right? You knew how to dodge melee swings at that point.
Yep. I mean, if you fought the Crucible Knight, either underneath the castle or in the Everjail, you have also been taught his shockwave to a degree.
Right. I was actually going to bring that up. I do like that attack.
Me too.
Because that's something that's specific to Elden Ring.
It's a new thing.
Yeah. So
because of the power of jump.
Right, exactly.
Still don't do.
No, I don't do it at all. And that's like old grumpy souls man habit, I think, more than anything.
Yeah.
One thing that I think is kind of funny narratively, like he kind of sucks, right? Like he hid from Radahn.
Mm-hmm. He got his ass kicked by Malenia.
Destroyed by Malenia. And yet he boasts all this powerful. Like his character is super arrogant, right? Like he's so arrogant despite all of these losses. I mean, I can't remember what Kenneth Haidt calls him, but he basically says the same, is that he's a coward and unfit for rule is effectively what he says. And I actually think, because I like to dive into the music, I actually think that, again, the story of Godrick trying to seek more power is really well articulated through his boss theme. And I like that we come into this cemetery where he has been piling the corpses of Tarnished onto himself. What's cool about Godrick is the instrumentation that they use. So they make use of a male and a female choir, and around the 40-second mark, you have this like choir floating along this. It's like almost like a waltz line that the strings are playing. It feels very like Sweeney Todd, which makes way too much sense because he is a butcher, right? Like effectively, and he's like perverting the human form in every way, which I think kind of lines up with what that whole musical is about, right? And so 40-second mark, 50-second mark, you have the male choir and the female choir, and they're both singing basically these two different songs. It's almost like they're the wails of the people that he's placed onto himself. Like their voices, their agony is still being expressed on them, which I thought, again, it was eerie. It made way too much sense knowing now what he was. When I first went through, I was like, me have club, me smash, I don't give a fuck who you are, right? But now backing up, knowing the story a little bit better, you've got these people that are just screaming in agony, and they're singing these songs. It's like almost a patchwork melody where the males are singing this one piece and the females are singing this other piece, and you've got the strings that are playing this other piece, but it never sounds bad. It just sounds stitched together, right? They somehow cobble the song together from all these different parts. And the best part, you have all that happen, and then at 1 minute 15 seconds, there's this violin solo that happens, and I remember it goes da na 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 na, and the thing that I thought while I was listening is he's such a pompous ass. That is the sound of somebody who believes that all of this is his, right? That everything he's earned he's made is his, but none of this is his power, right? It speaks so perfectly to the hubris of Godrick, right?
How small he is when he is dead.
Absolutely.
The corpse that is left behind is so much smaller
than the hulking mass. Yeah. I mean, this giant monolith of a character is then just crumbles away to nothing. So then you have the phase 2 transition, right? Where the dragon comes in and he cuts off his arm. There is a unified choir, it's a belt, basically. It is this power chord, and it's at around 2 minutes. And it's the dragon that's when the dragon's breathing fire across the arena for the first time. It's bum, 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 bum. And everything starts off together. But as the song progresses, right up to around 3:30, 3:40 something, it turns into chaos. Because what you realize is that Godrick has zero control over the dragon, because just the head of that dragon is infinitely more powerful than he could ever be. So he's just spraying fire randomly and just hoping that this thing that he's put onto himself will be able to help him beat you. But it's not his power. He doesn't know how to use it.
He took sweet business into the Crucible.
He took sweet business into the Crucible. That's right. And maybe that's part of the reason why, I don't think this is a good mechanical reason, but, it makes it kind of funny that, I get chomped by the dragon and it doesn't kill me. It's not strong enough to. He's not strong enough to. right? Because
Yep.
he narratively is nothing, but he should still be more than us. Like just to make that very clear, I think
Yeah,
I
we're
think that
talking
the
at the top level of like the actors on the play.
yeah
He is
yeah
insignificant compared to all of them.
yeah, but at that time, I think that we still maidenless
Yes,
lambkins. We have no business being in that castle. Yet
we
here
have no
we
business
are.
being anywhere
That's true.
ever.
That's absolutely true. His character of idolizing Godfrey and having all of I know Godfrey like basically founded the castle of Storm, like the Storm Cliff. He took that over from the Storm King and they built the Stormveil Castle there. But like that giant mural inside of Stormveil that has Godfrey in it, right?
Yep.
He still idolizes him, but they could not be any more different, right? Like Godfrey has to graft Sharash to himself to power down.
Yeah, enough
And
to
then
just be an Elden Lord.
Right, and Godrick has to graft himself to go toe to toe with the nobody.
Yes.
Right, and like all throughout the song, it still is like a anxiously driven song. Like they do paint him to be a lot more menacing than he actually is. Like he's large. It is still this foreboding string line. It is scary. It's legitimately scary. Like if someone came up to you and said, "I'm going to kill you and I'm going to tape your arm to my shoulder," I would be terrified. His whole business proposition is terrifying.
Yeah, what he's selling, I don't want.
I don't want it either.
Yeah.
It straight up sounds like a bad time, man.
Yeah, I mean, Rodrika, I feel her. Like, I get it.
Yeah. Yeah, all her friends are like, that's another good point though. It's like narratively, like they talk about all the terrible things he's done to me.
Yeah.
And so like for all of that, like all of the praise that we just gave to the narrative piece, for me to still not know how to fight him and not really be concerned because he's not going to beat me. He's not going to be a wall, not the way that Margit would be a wall, right?
Oh yeah, not at all. Yeah, and something you just mentioned there with Rodrika, that ties into one of your points about the choirs and how they kind of echo or bring to mind the people that he has grafted. Like, Rodrika specifically mentions, I think it's outside of Stormveil, that she can like still hear their wails or their screams or something to that effect. Like, it is very thematically appropriate.
Absolutely.
But he is not the wall that he should be to our player characters at that time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, he just should be more. And at least I think he should be. It's a cool looking fight. It's a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
But like you said, the dragon grab, it doesn't have to be a full one shot, but it should be a one shot to a lot wider range of health than it is.
Right.
I think.
I would agree.
Ultimately, that's kind of what it comes down to. A lot of his attacks are big.
Right.
Like they're big, bold, sweeping attacks. I mean, it's like, again, it's kind of a merging of like the grafted scions and the storm knights, but with a huge axe or set of axes instead. So it's big sweeping attacks, and eventually it's a dragon's head that just sweeps fire all over the place. Like, fighting him should be like fighting something bigger than what he actually is, because all of his attacks have like the quote big enemy type kind of move set, and you don't have to respect him like one.
Right.
Ultimately, you can get hit by so much and be fine. And that's not great. Like I don't know if it should stagger more or harder. I mean, I feel like a lot of his attacks knock down, but I feel like at least more of his moves should be more lethal than they were, just for the sake of like, if you want to frame this as a tough boss, like this isn't trying to sound gatekeepy. Like, I don't just want him to be a harder fight. I died to him more than a couple times my first playthrough. He was tough for me at the time, but like in retrospect and with more context on what the game offers and challenges you with, I think he could be more. When I beat him in my first playthrough, I don't remember the specific pull, but like I know that I never really figured out how to not get grabbed, and that did not do me any favors when I started dealing with the ulcerated tree spirits. Like,
like think about exactly, the ulcerated tree spirits is a great example, because like you get grabbed by it. Like if you go to the hero's grave underneath the very first one in Grave, and you get all the way down there, if you get grabbed by that tree spirit, you're dead. You lose.
Absolutely.
You've lost.
I think that technically, I mean, those two opportunities, unless I'm forgetting something, those are two of the first times in the game that a grab style attack or a bite style attack have really presented themselves, other than like the gargoyles will like jump on your back Like there are enemies that will like do
yeah.
little like crit styles, but like
Yeah.
in terms of a big enemy that will grab you and just dunk on you, the ulcerated tree spirit and Godrick. I'm just trying to make sure I haven't.
The bell bearing hunter.
Okay, that's true. Yeah, so the bell bearing hunter would do it. Yeah, I mean, yeah, the bell bearing hunter should kill you. Oh. No. Like this isn't this isn't the bell bearing video, but he should kill you. But the point stands that like there aren't many things that really teach you the big grab attacks early in the game. Godrick is
that
one
Godrick
of them.
Could have been that teacher.
And maybe for the sake of maybe that is why it's not super lethal, because they knew that not many players would have experienced that type of attack before, which I appreciate. But at the same time, for the sake of who he is, I think it should have hit a little bit harder.
If you think about the way that the Souls games, like the best teachers in the Souls games, usually it's the ones that overtune the damage. That's the way I think about it. I hate to praise Melania.
Was waiting.
You really learn how to not get hit by a dodge when you're fighting Melania.
By a dodge.
Or get hit by a grab by fighting Melania.
Yeah.
Or even fighting a bell bearing hunter. Like getting hit by one of those has such an extreme punishment that the player has to figure out very quickly what to do.
It's one of those. There are times where you learn through like tutorialization and like gentle. We're going to keep showing you this move. Keep practicing it.
Yeah.
And there are other times where we're going to show you this move. It's going to rock your world, and you are going to be afraid of it. It's you learn through fear. That's how grab attacks generally operate, is teaching through fear. Fear is a great teacher. Fear makes a hell of an impression. And the bite, grab, big enemy style grab attacks, those are terrifying to get hit by. Like, I mean, I can't be the only one that did this. Like every time one of those landed, even if I did survive it, I would almost set my controller down like, well, I'm done.
Yeah, like mentally cracked.
Yeah, like if a tree spirit gets a hold of you, you're like, well, this is scuffed.
Yeah.
The grab for like every other enemy, I mean, God, if a bell bearing hunter grabs you, you're gonna get thrown, and then he's gonna like full on Vader you. Yeah, like he's gonna throw his lightsaber at you. I mean, if an abductor grabs you, I mean, you might not die. Yeah, you're probably going to Volcano Manor, and if you're not going to Volcano Manor, you're running back for your souls.
That's right.
Like. It's such a lethal attack type that making the first one so gentle was... I see why they did it, and this isn't like thinking it should have been harder for everybody. Like, I don't think that
it's not a gatekeeping thing. It's just
it's not.
It's just the
boss. Just a mismatch of theme.
Yeah, and I think progressively too. I know I asked you this question before of like, you know, should Margit be? Was he too early in the game? I feel like it just wasn't like Godrick. He was too easy from where he was in the game and for how difficult the zone was, right?
Yes.
Like everything that led up to him had all these memories and was genuinely like it was very difficult. It was very methodical, and for it to be where it landed is just kind of underwhelming.
Yeah, great. I mean, that's a very fair point, I think. Like for where he is, like when I think about the memorable Stormveil experiences, Margit's on the list. There's a bunch of shit in the castle that's on the list. The cutscene and the theme and the spectacle of Godrick, that's on the list for sure. I mean, I loved it. But like the fight against him was cool looking, but ultimately it felt more like a God of War fight where it's just a brawl.
Right.
But it is not the same.
It was not a Souls
story.
Fight. Yeah.
Not in the same way. And it could have been, and it wasn't bad, but I don't know. In retrospect, I want it to be more. The first time, I was just glad it was over. Because I was bad enough to get hit by enough things that eventually I still died.
Yeah. No, I totally understand that. And I agree. It is a spectacle of a boss. So it sounds, if I'm hearing it right, it sounds like we kind of agree. He's not very good.
He is not what he could have been.
Yeah, I would say he is, you know, I hate to say there are bad bosses, but I think he is a bad boss. And that doesn't mean that he can't, like, he doesn't look cool and all that other, he doesn't have a great story, I think mechanically he is just underwhelming. And his narrative magnitude is underserved by his mechanics.
Agreed. Like if I had to letter grade it, I would be somewhere between like, for me subjectively, probably like low B.
Oh, really?
Because mostly from that, I'm still so fond of him.
Okay.
Because he was early on, but like if I were to step back from that and think like just in a vacuum,
Yeah.
Like on second, third playthroughs, like how excited am I for this boss fight again? Like I think mid C is where he lands for me.
Yeah, mine's like a C to a D. Like
Okay.
he's one of my least favorite fights. And not to the point
Makes
where
sense.
I'm like just I think probably good to say I'm never like not excited to play the game of Elden Ring. But
Yeah.
like in the full array and the buffet that is Elden Ring, like I'm not picking Godricks to put on my plate. Well, guys, that's what we think. We think Godrick, not very good, kind of trash. But let us know what you guys think. Do you agree with us? Do you disagree? What was your Godrick experience like? Let us know down in the comments below. And if you're enjoying this series where we go through and discuss whether the boss is trash or not, hit a like and subscribe. And until next time, guys, take care.